All right, he had a second question. What did you think of Joe Holmes when he was with Ozzy? He was quite good in some live shows, I have heard. At a record show years ago, got a cool Sabbath, cool, I don't know what this means, SB soundboard boot of Ozzy recorded in Chile with Joe on it. Yeah, it's interesting. I was disappointed that Joe Holmes didn't record a studio album with Ozzy. You know, Joe Holmes had this connection to Randy Rhoads. He studied with Randy when he was like really young, so I always thought that was cool. And I have heard some live clips, and I saw Ozzy live with Joe Holmes, and
Yeah,
he
so
did
nice.
seem really good. I'm not a huge fan of Zach. I think Zach, I got tired of Zach and Ozzy pretty quickly, so I was really hoping that Joe would do a proper studio album with Ozzy. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking maybe it'll be something that'll be a throwback to the Randy years because of his connection to Randy. Probably wishful thinking because everybody, an Ozzy record is predetermined before it even comes, what it's going to sound like before it even comes out. I think by the time Joe was in the band, you know, so I don't know. Yeah, I like Joe Holmes. I wish he had recorded something with Ozzy. It would have been interesting. I think there is a song that was like on the Beavis and Butthead movie or something like that.
Well, there was that, I think, but there was also, I think, Back on Earth was wasn't that Joe Holmes playing guitar on
Yeah,
that?
was okay.
All
That
right.
wasn't on the Beavis and Butthead thing. There was one song
No,
with
that was
Joe
on
Holmes
the
on it,
Ozman.
and
Back on Earth
honestly,
was on.
it sounds just like something with Zach. You know, it
So
doesn't to me sound radically different than anything that Ozzy was doing at that time.
right. So Back on Earth was on the Ozman Cometh, and I think that was one of the songs that it featured Joe Holmes. I saw Joe Holmes with Ozzy in '95. I thought he was great. I was surprised at how good he was, and it was really cool to hear um, Ozzy songs without all the pinch harmonics. And I didn't mind it at first because it was kind of unique in '89, and he wasn't really doing it that much. I'm talking about Zach Wild. He wasn't really doing it that much on No Rest for the Wicked. But man, he made up for lost time when he discovered how to do it, and it just got way out of hand. So it was good to get a little break from that. Uh, and I like Joe Holmes. I didn't make the connection at the time, but I liked Lizzie Borden Visual Lies album, and that was the only album that Joe was on. And I thought that was a really, really good album. It was well written, production was good, but the riffs were really cool. It was just a really, really tight album. And when I did make the connection between, you know, Joe Holmes being the guitarist on the Lizzie Borden Visual Lies album, and also part of the Ozzy Osbourne touring band, I thought, oh, that'll be cool. And he did. He had a Randy. Then of course you can go back now and you can check out YouTube videos where you can watch him playing. And there's one in like Brazil, I think, a live clip, and you can hear him. And I think he sounds. You could tell there's a Randy influence. I'm not sure if it was because he studied under Randy when he was younger, or if he was just you know, trying to incorporate that classic sound into his contribution in the band. But yeah, I liked him, and I wish he had done more. But then it gets into the thing where you might assume that because a person is in Ozzy's band that they can write music, that they can write songs, and we don't know. We don't know if Joe
Yeah.
Holmes was able, if he had the ability to write songs. Uh, Randy did, or at least Randy had the ability to come up with riffs that would, you know, when Bob Daisley, and we all know how that stuff came together. You know, Bob basically arranged the songs, but built off of Randy's riffs. I don't know that there would have been, unless you brought Bob back, maybe Bob could have worked with Joe the way that he worked with Randy, and it might have been something amazing, but could have been, should have been, who knows. Didn't last for one reason or another. And I think there was like a point where Ozzy was working with Steve Vai too, and there's a whole unreleased album demo thing that came out, I think, just before Osmosis.
Yeah. That's
and
when he was working with Steve Vai.
he was working with Steve Vai. So that stuff's pretty cool. It sounds a little odd. It doesn't really sound like Ozzy material. It sounds like Ozzy singing someone else's songs, and I guess it's basically what it's always been, more or less. But in that situation, it was more obvious. Uh, yeah, and I often wonder, where is Joe Holmes now? Is he still playing? I mean, he was in a band. I
Yeah,
forget what the
we were
name
just
was.
talking about him not that long ago with our friend
Yeah,
Nick.
yeah.
I can't remember what the name of the group was. He did have a group that
Nick,
was pretty
yeah, Nick
cool. They
Shea.
released a couple songs.
Front of
And I
mine.
think I did look. I think he is still out there, kind of playing with some different artists and stuff. But when he was with Ozzy, that was what, before Down to Earth?
Yeah, well, he was with
Right.
Ozzy in
Right,
'95, so it was
because they went to
95.
do Down to Earth. It wasn't working. They brought Zach back. So,
Zach back, yeah.
you're
So he,
talking the 90s when did Down to Earth come out? Mid 96, 97 or something like that?
I think it was like '98. I'd have to check, but I know that Osmosis came out around '95. Well, I know I saw him in '95, and I'm assuming that was when the album came out. I should know this. I don't. I kind of like just sort of, even though I bought all the Ozzy albums, solo albums, I never really got into them past a certain point. So they all kind of blurred together.
Yeah,
But I'm
that
pretty
whole
sure that,
90s era. It's
yeah,
like Osmosis and Down to Earth. This is when Ozzy now starts taking 5 years between a record. And it was a time when, this type of music, and I think this band that Joe Holmes had, although it was cool, it was sort of straddling that line of trying to sound, like what was happening at that time in music, which was maybe like sort of the grungy type of down-tuned guitar influence, but yet it still had some classic metalish type things. It seemed cool. I don't remember that song Back to Earth. So obviously it wasn't that mind blowing, and because I can't really remember much about it, or I don't think it really made any kind of impression on me. So
I like it, and I think about it from time to time. And I remember the video was really cool. It was a black and white video, and it was sort of like done in an old silent movie, like a silent movie reel, like you would have seen Nosferatu or uh, uh, Phantom of the Opera. And Ozzy had it was a very macabre black and white video. And I like the song. It was one of the reasons I bought the Ozman comic. I thought it was pretty cool. It's nothing, yeah, it's nothing really outstanding, but it's had a certain quality that I like. I like the melody stuck in my head. But yeah, I don't know. It would have been cool to at least see where things have gone with Joe Holmes, because I think he was a good guitar player. I was impressed with him live, and it would have been interesting to see what he could have contributed in the studio. So,
yeah, unfortunately, I think at that point, like the Down to Earth album, it's got there's millions of different songwriters involved in it. This is the point, really, from like after Osmosis, around Osmosis, where Ozzy just all of a sudden has all these songwriters and all these people that come in and write what they think is going to work for Ozzy. Where the band dynamic, Ozzy never really had a band dynamic anymore. Maybe starting with Osmosis, No More Tears, I think was still had that, although he brought in like Lemmy Kilmister to help with the lyrics and some things and stuff. But really with Down to Earth, then it's like Ozzy. And then when you get into Black Rain and everything like that, it just feels like there's somebody else making the decisions about what Ozzy's records are going to sound like. Outside songwriters, business people, managers, lawyers, accountants. It just does not feel like an organic process as a band sitting in a room jamming out songs. It just never felt like that anymore with Ozzy, starting with Down to Earth. So that's why, like when what's his name, Tracy G came into the band for Scream, it just didn't sound any different. Whereas in the past, when Jakey Lee came into the band, it really changed the sound of the band. When Zach came into the band, it changed the sound of the band because it was still a band at that point. When not Tracy G, who was Scream? Who's the Scream guitar player?
It was the Greek guy. He was from Firewind. I forget his name. It wasn't Tracy G. Tracy
Right,
G
Tracy
was
G was
Dio's
with
band.
Dio.
Yeah.
Well,
Gus
G.
something.
Gus
G.
G.
There you
Right,
go.
that's why I got it confused.
G.
But again, it didn't seem like it really changed anything. And so unfortunately, I think even if Joe Holmes had stuck around, I think it would have just sounded like the Down to Earth album. I don't think it would have been really any different, unfortunately, because of where Ozzy's at. It's almost like it doesn't matter who the guitar player is anymore. It doesn't matter who's in the band. He's lost that element of where his bands used to have a sound to them. It doesn't seem to really matter anymore. It's just all interchangeable.
I agree that it definitely sounds like there's a lot of input coming from different places, but I don't recall seeing a lot of different names on the writing credits. I mean, I think whenever Zach was involved with an album, I think he usually got a writing credit. And then we had Dean Castronova on Osmosis, and I think he even got a writing credit, if I'm not mistaken. I think his band that was on the album was primarily got the writing credits. And so he had Dean Castronova on drums for Osmosis, Zach on guitar, and Robert Trujillo.
Yeah, I'm looking at Down to Earth right now. Not counting Ozzy, there's 9 other songwriters credited across almost every song. Has 1 or 2 different guys on it. Scott Humphrey, Tim Palmer. I mean, who are these people? Andy Stummer, Danny Saber. Who are these people? Who are these people?
I'm a big Andy Stummer fan.
Right. I mean, that's kind of where just what Ozzy sort of became.
Maybe I'm thinking of Osmosis then. Like I said, I mean, after I think No More Tears, I didn't really there wasn't really too much excitement about an Ozzy solo album. I mean, I bought them all, and I'm probably more forgiving than some people when it comes to Ozzy solo stuff. Like I've said time and time again, I love Ozzy's voice, and I love to know that he's still at it and he's still singing. And there's always, at least when every album, there's at least a song or 2 that I like. But it wasn't like I patiently waited for every album to drop and then feverishly ran home and put it on a record player or CD player and then just worshipped at the altar of the album. It had been a long time since I've done that. I mean, probably the last time was Bark at the Moon, and as I've said time and time again, I was disappointed by that at the time. I really liked No Rest for the Wicked. I was excited about that. It was almost that sort of ritual, buying it, couldn't wait until it came out. I bought it right away. And I wasn't disappointed. I liked it then, and I still like it. I think Zach's guitar playing was really cool. I liked his riffs, and it was before he got into the pinch harmonic overload. And Ultimate Sin, it was okay. I never really could warm up to that one. There was just something about it. Part of it's the production, part of it's the songs. They just seem a little phoned in, by and large. Nothing really wrong with it. It just wasn't one that really appealed to me. I kind of put it on the same level as Bark at the Moon. And I know there's people that love Bark at the Moon, and believe me, I've been trying. I'm thinking every time I pull it out, I'm like, this is going to be it. This is going to be a time where it's really just going to lock into place. And I'm going to be like, yes, I love this album now. But it hasn't happened. And I think after so many listens at this point, it's probably not. I take it for what it is, and it's got some good songs, but whatever. But the last album Ozzy album I think I really got enthusiastic about, was really into, was probably No Rest for the Wicked. I liked No More Tears, but like you said, there's so many different writers involved in that. It kind of lost this Ozzy band identity thing, and it became Hollywood Ozzy. You know, we have Slash in there. Well, we have Bob
Yeah.
Daisley was contributed some writing to it. So that kind of was a bit of a throwback to the classic Ozzy era, 80, 81. But it wasn't really conveyed in the music. It just sounded like it was just too, a little too modern. It kind of reminded me of Guns N' Roses in some ways. Maybe it was because Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 came out at the same time. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
I
looking
think
at
Kingdom
Oz.
lost the plot a long time ago.
I'm looking I'm looking at Osmosis, and there's 11 different songwriters, including Ozzy, on Osmosis. And again, this is what makes it not really sound like any kind of why it has no real, why it doesn't really matter who's in the band, because the guys in the band don't have a huge influence on the songs, and it's just disappointing. And I'm like you, No Rest for the Wicked was the last Ozzy album that I was super excited about. No More Tears came out, and I do really like that record, but I sort of waited before I got that. I remember hearing the songs on the radio
Yeah,
and everything, and eventually I did get it, and I did like it. And it's really the last Ozzy album that I can say that I do really like, because then it just everything, no pun intended, goes off the rails kind of for me with Ozzy and his solo career. So,
yeah.
all right, what do you got for the next question for us?
Okay, James Thomas asks, what is your favorite guilty pleasure Sabbath song? One that's hard to defend if you put it on a mixtape. For example, I love Feels Good to Me with Tony Martin. In parentheses, I even like the cheesy music video. But it would get laughed off most Sabbath playlists. Got a guilty pleasure. I don't feel guilty about liking any Sabbath song, but I know what you mean, James. I got you. Probably Rock and Roll Doctor. I know people like love to pick on that song, and I love it. I think it's a great song. It's certainly not anything profound lyrically, and musically it's not really breaking any new ground, but it's a fun song. In the context of the album, I always like the placement, and I look forward to hearing it. And I would definitely put that on a Black Sabbath mixtape for me. But it depends on the purpose of the mixtape. If I was making a mixtape to turn somebody on to Black Sabbath, I might not put that one on there. But for me to listen to as like a greatest hits compilation or a personalized Darren mix, yeah, I would put that on there, and that would probably be my guilty pleasure. Although now that I think about it, that would be one guilty pleasure tune. I like Danger Zone from Seven Star. I think that's a good song. It's really cheesy though, so
Yeah,
that's one. It's an easy target for someone to make fun of in the Danger Zone. But
yeah,
I like it. It's a good, and I like Seven Star. I mean, you know what, you're going to say guilty song, guilty pleasure song, guilty pleasure album for me is Seven Star. I like the whole thing. It was hard for me to connect with it initially. There was nothing wrong with it. I just didn't. It was hard for me to connect with it as a Black Sabbath album. Tony's tone was different. It was a little bit more antiseptic, I guess you could say, or more mainstream. There wasn't much about it that sounded familiar to the back catalog, Black Sabbath's back catalog. So it was a little different, hard to connect with. But over time, I've gotten pretty used to it, and I like it. So Danger Zone would be another guilty pleasure song. See, Tony Martin. Let's see. The song on Forbidden, Rusty Angels. Is that
yeah.
it? I kind of like that. I do like it. That would I guess I could consider that a guilty pleasure song as well. If I was going to make a mixtape, though, I'd want to have all the albums. I want to at least pull one song off each album, one or two songs off of each album. Rusty Angels would be one I would probably pull off of Forbidden. So those are my three picks: Rusty Angels, Danger Zone from Seven Star, and Rock and Roll Doctor from Technical Ecstasy, the Ozzy era. Dio, there are no guilty pleasure songs. I think everyone is on point. I don't think that there's any song from the Dio era that would cause anyone to feel ashamed of picking. What about you? Can you think of anything from the Dio
Yeah.
era?
No. But I mean, for me, okay, from the Ozzy era, I mean, I don't think anybody would be embarrassed, but maybe Am I Going Insane? I know some people think that that's kind of
That's
a
good.
goofy song, but I like that song. From Keep It Warm from Born Again.
I love that. That is
I love
actually
that song.
no guilt with that. I mean, I always like when I'm in the process of talking about all the things I dislike about Born Again, I will always say, but Keep It Warm has one of my favorite Tony Iommi riffs of all time. That riff, the way that just churns out, the way it just like winds into that, man, I just like, oh, I love it.
And the chorus is great in that song.
Yeah, I love that song.
And then from Tony Martin, I would probably say, let's go to Forbidden with I Won't Cry for You. I always thought that Tony Martin shined on the ballady type stuff, Cross of Thorns, for instance. I always thought he sounded great in that,
Yeah, no,
that kind of zone. So
Dying for Love is the one I think brought it up recently. It's one that on Cross Purposes that I would just sort of initially it didn't grab me. I heard the keyboard beginning of it, and I just my mind went to, all right, what's the next song? I just didn't want to hear that keyboard, and I kind of assumed it was going to go in a different direction. Of course, I listened to it through several times, but it just never really clicked with me until actually fairly recently. I was listening to the CD and it got to that, and man, it just grabbed me. The chorus, the verses, it's a great song, good lyrics, and in some ways, it's a good companion song to Cross of Thorns, the same album. It's just different enough to justify its existence, but compatible enough where it sits comfortably on the same album, and it kind of occupies a little bit of a ballad. Well, I think Dying for Love could definitely be considered a ballad. Cross the Thorns, same sort of tempo, but I wouldn't necessarily consider it a ballad. But yeah, Cross the Thorns, that was a good call. Again, I would never feel guilty about that particular song. Dying for Love, maybe. It's not one that generally pops up in the course of conversation of Black Sabbath, and especially not overall, but not even in the context of a Tony Martin conversation. It usually doesn't make an appearance to come up. So
why don't you read the next question from Jack Neeson? That seems to flow into what we're just talking about here. So
I've got a two-parter. Jack Neeson, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. What is your favorite Tony Martin era song, and why that song? Okay, so it's a two parts. I'll do the first part. Okay, my favorite Tony Martin song. That's a hard one. I would have to go with what's my current fave. My current fave Tony Martin song is The Lawmaker. I love it. Off a Tear.
yeah,
Really cool. And I know that when we talk about Black Sabbath, we're talking about everything that are characteristics of Black Sabbath, are the things that we love about the band. And we love the characteristics and the personality of the band and all the unique qualities that the band possesses. And that's why we're fans. And that's all true, except what I like about this song is that it kind of has a rainbow-esque quality. It has a very Anglo, big, classic metal feel to it that I think works. It definitely works well with Tony Martin's voice. I think Tony Iommi, I think his riff is really cool. I think he lends himself to that in that context really well. And the song just works. It's a great song. Reminds me a lot of Dio. I think it's probably and there's a lot of comparisons to make between Tony Martin and Dio from time to time, especially on Headless Cross, at least half of Headless Cross, and on Tear, it kind of continues. There's some comparisons to be made, and I think that this song is definitely one where you can make the comparison between Tony Martin and Ronnie James Dio. That's my current favorite is that Lawmaker.
All right, that's a tough question. I would probably that would have been my favorite from the Tear album, but I think that for Tony Martin, him showing off his voice, I've got to say that maybe the song "Headless Cross," I think, is a really strong statement from Tony Martin. If I had to pick a close second, I mentioned Cross of Thorns earlier. I think that's one of his best performances, and maybe The Shining, the first
Yeah,
song we hear from him from Eternal Idol. But I guess if I had a, just one thing to really like show somebody Tony Martin and Black Sabbath, I'd probably go with Headless Cross. It's got
yeah,
a big, huge chorus. He's all over his vocal range there, and it's just a big dramatic song. It's got a lot of vocals in it and the chorus and everything. So it's almost like a signature song
oh,
for him in
definitely. Yeah,
some
I would
ways.
definitely consider it a signature song. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good. When you think about it, you start to think about these albums and the songs that are on them. It really is kind of hard to pinpoint a favorite. I mean, at least every album. I wouldn't say that there's an album that doesn't have a great song, a great Tony Martin song. Headless Cross, and we've got like Headless Cross, definitely that's pretty iconic. But to say somebody was curious about what Tony Martin sounded like in Black Sabbath, I would probably use that as a reference point. But When Death Calls is another good one.
Yeah,
I like Nightwing. It's pretty cool.
yeah.
And
The
Tear,
song "The Eternal Idol," that's really cool also.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The Shining. You said that Glory Ride. I love that. A little different for Sabbath, but I love the song. Love the Tony Martin's voice on that. Structure of the song is really cool. Good riffs.
All
Uh,
right. Yeah, what's the
yeah.
second part of his question there?
Second part of the question is, what is the best Black Sabbath gig or Black Sabbath related gig in parentheses you have been to? Why was that gig better than the others? The best Black Sabbath gig I was at was, I think it was 1999, or was it 2000? But it was at it was in Camden, New Jersey. I remember, and I think it might have been part of Ozfest, but it was the original lineup. It was Bill Ward on drums, Ozzy, Geezer, Tony, and the set list was pretty much a greatest hits, but I was really, really into it. I really enjoyed that concert. Jumping around, I was singing along, and we were quite a ways away from. They got tickets. I think it was like a last minute thing or something. We decided to go, and we were out of the actual. I mean, it's an outdoor indoor type of thing where part of it is covered, like the maybe the first 30 rows or something are covered, and then you go back and there's lawn seats and stuff like that. I remember my friends and I were underneath one of the poles that had the PA speakers, and we could just kind of in the distance we could see the band well enough to know they were there, but the sound was right there above me, and it was the original Black Sabbath band, and I was really excited to see him in '96. Of course, it was with Mike Borden on drums, so it was cool. But it was cool hearing Ozzy fronting Black Sabbath. It wasn't really Black Sabbath, but in 2000 with the original lineup, I was really excited. I was really happy to see that. That was probably my favorite. Second favorite, Uh, Probably when Dio came back and they called the band Heaven and Hell. Not crazy about the album, but the concert was great. 2007, I think that was. John, you and I
Yeah,
went to that.
they
I
played
thought,
so many deep cuts. It was great.
yeah, it was stellar. I mean, Dio sounded fantastic. Mob Rules sounded incredible. After All, they opened up with After All. I don't know if they played Lonely is the Word. I think they played it at the
Radio City show.
Radio
Yeah,
City
I
Music
think they
Hall
played
show, but I think they dropped it by the time we saw them, which wasn't that long after that was released. Those are my favorite 2000 original Ozzy era band, and the Dio era was that 2007 Heaven and Hell show.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. That reunion show, I saw them, whatever it would have been, 2000. The reunion live album was already out, and it was pretty exciting. And yeah, that was just great. I remember them opening with War Pigs, the air raid siren thing at the beginning, and War Pigs coming in, and Ozzy. I have some memory that he I don't know if he came up from up through the stage or something, or he just sort of came out. There was maybe smoke on the stage or something, but it was just like, yeah. And I'm pretty sure Bill was in the band
Sure.
because they had
Yeah.
just put out that reunion record. So it was the full band. It was just so heavy. Ozzy still sounded really good at that point. He was still, moving around a lot on stage and everything. And being that I had never seen the band with Ozzy before, I was okay with hearing, that set list. Complaint
Yeah.
would be that they didn't change the set list enough as years went on. But at that point, it was great to hear Behind the Wall Asleep and,
Mm.
NIB and even Paranoid and Children of the Grave and all that stuff. It was cool to hear all that stuff and with them back. And yeah, it was super, super cool.
Yeah, definitely was.